So, hi, Remco. Thank you so much for being here with us today. How are you? How is everything
I'm doing
going?
I'm doing well, thank you, Laura, and thanks for having me on your video interview.
Yes, well, no, thank you for, separating this time and wanting to share with us and with the Newstex community a little bit about you, yourself, your publication, and your experiences. So, do you want to let people know about your publication a little bit? Remco owns a publication that is called Silicon Canals. Can you please tell us a little bit about what is it?
Yeah, so I'm Remco Janssen. I'm from the Netherlands, the metropole region, Amsterdam. Sorry, that was the doorbell. Let me start again. My name is Remco Janssen. I'm the founder and managing director of Silicon Canals. I'm from the metropole region, Amsterdam. I founded Silicon Canals in 2014 in Amsterdam. It was just a personal blog, very lightweight. We just started blogging in Dutch about the Amsterdam startup ecosystem, which at that time was booming. I was riding my bike on the canals and I was sort of wondering, hey, where all these cool startups came from, all of a sudden. And, that's where the idea of Silicon Canals came from. Ever since then, we transitioned into, publishing in English. That's since 2016. And since 2018, we started covering, first gradually Germany, France, UK, and then we decided, oh, well, let's do it. Let's do whole of Europe, minus Turkey and Russia. That's sort of our border. And Israel is always a little bit, let's say, half-half. If Israel has something to do with the mainland, let's say there's an Israeli tech startup, getting funding from a European VC, then we'll definitely cover. If it's an Israeli company doing something solely in Israel or the US, then not. So that's a little bit of our, let's say, scope. So we cover the European technology ecosystem, very much focused on startups, scale-ups. We're a news website, so we want to give the most relevant information out there, and a lot what's going on in the startup and scale-up ecosystem is funding announcements. But of course, if there's anything going on with government or big tech or other kind of developments that are relevant for the European technology ecosystem, then we'll cover it. And what we've seen in the past is that Europe has been underserved as a market for media companies. I mean, if you go to the US or Silicon Valley, or just the US in general, I mean, every newspaper has a big technology desk, right? They have multiple technology editors. There's a lot of big online publications covering Silicon Valley or tech in general. And in Europe, especially in the English language, I would say it's a very underserved market, and it's still a market with, well, roughly, I don't know, 250 million people, 500 million, I don't even know. So it is, and there's a lot of interest internationally, but also inside of Europe, to know what's going on in various markets. And there's only one defining language, and that's English. That's mostly a language that everybody speaks. So that's why we decided to do it in English. While, a lot of local markets are covered by startup blogs or news outlets. But if it's in the local language, for instance, I don't know if you can read German. I don't think you speak German, do you?
No, not at all.
No. Well, I can read German, Spanish, French, a little bit of Italian, and of course, English very well. And sometimes I recognize some Danish or Swedish words, but maybe I'm a little bit of a language freak, but not everybody has that capacity.
Yes, you're not the average.
I'm not the average, so that's why we decided to cover it in English. And I think it's a very interesting, way of covering the European market and making that information available through to a larger public.
Well, that's great. That's great. Thank you so much for that amazing publication that you have put out there in the world. So, we are all beneficiating from those news that you are covering and delivering in English, so the entire world can read it so well. Thank you so much. Yeah. It's super interesting seeing how it has been growing, your publication, until today, that I will consider Silicon Canals a big publication. What do you think? Yes?
I mean, we have strides to make. So for next year, we're very ambitious. At the moment, we're doubling down on our news coverage and
Okay,
our background articles. So we also have a syndication deal with a big publishing house in India, a big newspaper
amazing.
publisher that are going to produce content for us, so we can actually scale up the production of our news, of our background stories. We will have another full-timer joining our team next year. So yes, we're definitely doubling or maybe even tripling down on our news and background content. And for us, it's really important to have a very in-depth coverage of everything that's going on, and also to work more on analysis, guest contribution. So we have pundits giving us the right kind of information and background and guest contribution stories. With everything that's going on basically in the ecosystem, because it is such a large community. It's very difficult to know everything about everything, but
Yeah,
at least we want to bring down the important stuff, because there's a lot happening in the Nordics, but there's also a lot happening in Central and Eastern Europe. In Southern Europe, it's not just the main markets, let's say, France, Germany, UK, that are important. And I would definitely say, as a Dutchman, the Netherlands, which is always a small country but a big player already in the tech ecosystem. So I think there's a lot to cover, and especially right now, with Russia on our frontiers, banging on the door and threaten our livelihood and our democracy. I think we have the technology ecosystem has a very
or
important role on keeping our economic and financial prosperity. But also democracy. So yeah, I think technology is a bit of an underrated market, but it is the prime driver of growth for the foreseeable future in Europe, if you'd ask me. And you did, perhaps, but
yeah,
not as
exactly, I did. Well, these are exciting news for Silicon Canals in 2023. Hopefully, everything is going to turn out super good, super well for you. And we wish you the best. And you are right in a lot of what you have shared until now. So big, big movements you are going to have. And that's
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah.
Okay, Remco. So let's start with the questions that I got prepared for you today. So
Perfect.
um to start, we want to get to know you a little bit, and how
Yeah.
your past has influenced your present. So we want to ask, what was your first job and how did it influence your career?
Well, I would actually mention my first two jobs, because they both came together, and that's how I became the founder of Silicon Canal. So my first real job was working as well, a sort of jack of all trades at a startup, what we called an e-commerce website. It was one of the first food order websites in Europe, called UrbanBite. And I
Okay.
was doing restaurant sales. So I was onboarding restaurants, but I was also working on the customer service. I was creating the content for the website. This was back in 2001, right after the dot-com bubble.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and we were bleeding money, of course, and this was one of my first jobs, and I got a first-hand feel of basically a startup and how to bootstrap, because all our funding was already gone, and trying to keep that afloat. And I got a real knack and feel for consumer technology back then. And then after a while, I went back to college, to university, and I got my bachelor degree in journalism. And after that, I landed my first job as a sports journalist, as a football
Oh,
journalist.
okay.
Yes. So I've really been a newspaper reporter. I've been in the trenches. And that experience, brought me a lot. And there are a lot of similarities between football journalism and technology journalism. They're both a beat where sometimes we talk about insane amount of money that's being paid, or being poured into the industry. There's a lot of emotion involved. In football, it's the fans cheering for their team. In technology, it's a lot about privacy, data, corruption sometimes happening, what we've seen with Ferranos, and now again with FTX, all kinds of scandals. So there's a lot of similarities, actually, more than you think, between football and technology. And what I've learned, working at a startup, and also later on consulting for startups, is, how cool it is and how world and life changing they can be. And what I've learned from journalism is that you need to keep, my days at the newspapers, that you need to keep a close tab on what's going on in the industry, because there will always be fakers, there will always be fraud, there will also be massive failures. It's not always about the bright and cheerful successes, but it's also about the darker side of the business. So we want to keep tab on both of those, and I think these two jobs in the beginning of my career shaped who I am now, and also shaped how Silicon Canals became.
Exactly.
Really.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Well, my following question, I believe that you have already responded a little bit about it, but well, if you would like to mention a few phrases or sentences again, it is, what motivated you to start creating content?
Yeah, well, I've always been a creator since early on. I've always been involved in content. And if you look more specifically towards Silicon Canals, what motivated us to create the kind of content that we're doing with Silicon Canals is that what I noticed is that I already mentioned that a little bit, is that the general media doesn't have a thorough understanding of technology in the startup ecosystem. And I think that was my key motivator to start doing this, is educating the media as well. That was the first bit, because I was running a PR agency at the time.
Right.
I was a little bit frustrated by the lack of knowledge of the general media and even the technology reporters. And I think since then we've come a long way. I wouldn't say that we're the only one educated in the market. The market also educated the media, but it's now it is a mature industry now in Europe. And I like to think that at least we had a little something to do with that. And I think that motivation really helped me in pushing forward, because it's been 8 years already, more than 8 years now.
Yes.
And of course, it's not always been easy, starting a publication from scratch. But I think, I'm humble enough to say that we're not the only ones who did that, but I'm proud enough to say that I feel that we played an important role in that. Yes. To
sure.
bringing more knowledge about the startup ecosystem to a larger audience.
I'm sure. So I would like to ask, did you became, or were you passionate about technology before doing this, or you just saw the lack of knowledge among the technology industry, or what?
No, that's a good question. Yeah, well, of course, first of all, because of my stint at the food order side, I mean, that was already in its early stages.
Exactly. You were on a technology startup at the end.
Yeah. So and after becoming a sports journalist, I became a PR agent, a public relations freelancer at first, and later on that became an agency. And pretty quickly, because of that love for technology, I sort of transitioned into doing that for startups and technology companies.
Okay.
So yeah, and while I was doing that, so Silicon Canals is basically a spin-off of my consultancy.
Exactly. Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing, Remco.
So that's how it came to life.
Okay, that's great. That's great. You've been well, very experienced, in your career, I think. So, Remco, my next question for you is, could you please share with us the most difficult thing you've encountered to be where you are today?
Well, it is not one thing, but it is, I mean, to summarize that, I would say persistence and tenacity. I would say that only since the last 2 years, we're a profitable company, as it was a spin out of my other business, the PR consultancy. It never really was about being a profitable company. It was always about hitting break even. And I was basically funding and fueling the mission that we have with my own money. And it took quite a long while before we found a good business model that we thought worked for us. Because advertisement is not, I mean, you can't, in a B2B trade publication, you can't live out of advertisement, because page views, this is a very niche audience, so the
Yeah.
page views are not enough to cover that with advertisement. And the other way we started doing that is with content marketing. So, and it took a while before we really understood how we could serve our clients best. And basically what I learned is that running the same kind of content as we did with our PR agency. So I took the learnings from the PR agency and made sure that we build a content studio as it was an agency, but run on a media platform and with the reach of a media platform. So we created a very powerful, I would say, business mechanic where we can make it into a profitable business. And also, media is not always scalable. The more content you make, the more people you need. But we found a way to actually make it at least more efficient. I'm Dutch. I think our country value is efficiency.
Efficiency, yes. I think.
And that's and the persistence of pursuing to find a business model that works for us. I mean, everybody always thinks of journalism as sort of a freebie. Everybody's always looking for free publicity, but in the end, it's a business, and it's 100% my business. We
Exactly.
don't have any external investors. I always funded it 100% myself. So every penny that goes into the platform is towards my livelihood, the education of my children, to make sure that they're fed. And if I wouldn't have that, then there is no Silicon Canals without that. So a huge thank to our partners and sponsors for sticking with us. Some have already been with us for 4 or 5 years or even longer. And that's what I'm entirely grateful for. But it's the persistence that got us to this point, basically. Yeah, just keep on
Wow.
going.
Yes, that's the message. Keep on going. So,
Yeah.
well, it is amazing. It is amazing to see how long you had to support yourself, and the publication to actually make it profitable today, nowadays. So, you were fighting for this purpose that you had, and well, worth it, I think, but it has been a difficult way, a difficult path, right?
Yeah. So that's why I'm extremely proud that we are at this point where we are right now. Yeah.
That's amazing, Remco. Really congratulations from all of us, from all of our team, for achieving all of this by yourself. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, now another personal question to get to know this amazing Remco behind Silicon Canals. It is, who are some of your favorite authors?
Yes.
So
Would
do
you
you
mean?
read a lot or not that much?
I used to read a lot, and right now I don't. I always feel that I don't have the time for that. But if I would go look back in my career, the people that influenced me the most, I mean, I'm a big fan of literature, and one of my favorite authors is Bret Easton Ellis, American Psycho. A bit of a grim book, and of course everybody knows the movie, but I read the book already way before the movie got out.
Okay.
There's not a clear message here for business right now, other than do it the exact opposite way of Patrick Bateman. Is keeping up appearances is not the way to run a business. It is being vulnerable, asking for help, and all that sort of stuff. My favorite business author has always been David Meerman Scott. He is the author of The New Rules of Marketing and PR. And weirdly enough, he inspired me at first when I started in public relations to pursue that career. I was looking for a book on, how should I do it? I was transitioning from being a journalist. I knew how to do that into a PR. So, I was just rules PR. Oh, that's smart. I get immediately to his book. So I ordered his book. Later on, he came to speak in the Netherlands. I became the founder of Social Media Club Amsterdam back then in 2010.
Wow.
He came over to speak with us, and I would say we're on friendly terms now. He hasn't been to the Netherlands, unfortunately, for quite some time, so I haven't seen him in person. But he's doing quite well with all his business books. And the one lesson that I've learned from him, and it, he always says, think like a publisher. So that's the way he does public relations. Think like a publisher. And weirdly enough, that sort of motivated me to really become a publisher, to
Okay.
be to to really launch a publication. And yeah, it wasn't exactly probably how we foresee that to happen. But he's actually the reason why I went from switching to journalism to PR, and then from PR back to
Publish.
journalism, and now here I am. It's
Yes.
a weird twist and turn of events, I would say.
Yes. Well, but that's great. That's great because we have Silicon Canals, which is such an amazing publication. So yes. Well, we will have to thank, this author for
Yeah,
that, for having
David
you
David
thinking as a
Meerman Scott.
publisher.
Yeah,
David, yeah, David Mama.
David Meerman Scott. Yeah.
Okay, so we have to thank David, a little bit for that. Okay, Remco, thank you. Well, now we've got to know a little bit of this busy publisher Remco, but we would like to know a little bit of what do you do when you're not working?
Yeah, what I do when I'm not working? Well, I have two young boys to look after. They're 8 and 10, Felix and Oscar. And what I do a lot with them, they're really into gaming, Marvel, Star Wars. So we have to go to movies, but they also like to go to museum or theme parks. So yeah, I spend a lot of time with them. And if I'm not with them, I like to mix business with pleasure. So because of my work, I get invited a lot to travel in Europe to
Okay.
conferences, and I always try at least to stay a few extra days. It doesn't always work out that way, but
Okay.
yeah, I really like taking city trips. Of course, I try to be wary of the climate as well. I know that air flight, unfortunately, is the most efficient way to go travel anywhere in Europe. If possible, I take the train, and of course, I always do carbon offsetting to sort of ease my discomfort with my frequent flyer pattern. Yeah, and I'm a huge foodie. So yes, if there's a food hall, and it doesn't really matter if it's street food or Michelin star restaurant, I don't care. I can enjoy a little, Chinese eatery where, there's just the formica tables and, no linen, and, you just order from a big menu and you slurp your soup away to, a really fancy restaurant with all the nice wines and all the good stuff and anything in between. I just love all kinds of food. Um, and yeah, I'm a big coffee snob as well. So when I travel to different cities, I always try to find the specialty coffee places, find the really good roasteries that really know their stuff, and get a good oat cappuccino. I was already drinking Oatly even way before they got famous, and we never wrote about them until they got they did a massive IPO. No, so yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what keeps me going. And as a Dutchman, I'm a big football fan, but unfortunately, the World Cup in Qatar was a little bit disappointing. Uh,
Yes, a lot.
both from a lot, both from a human right perspective, and from I would say, yeah, from the quality standpoint of our game. And unfortunately, we lost to Argentina in a very embarrassing way, I would say. Yes.
I won't say anything about it.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, please be careful there. Tread lightly.
Okay. Okay,
I
okay,
do
okay,
remind you, I
Remco.
speak Spanish.
Yeah. Okay, so do you think that all of these activities help you, like to inspire and motivate? Or more like, I believe that everything that you have shared is like you are enjoying many, many things, like from different perspectives. Your children, coffee,
Mhm.
food, traveling, all of that. But do you think that this way of living gets you to be in constant motivation to keep going? Or what do you think?
Well, my motivation personally is, to also show to my boys, you can be an entrepreneur, you can build your own business, while also enjoying life. Also, I'm there for them as well.
Absolutely.
Making sure that, I have a good quality of life. You have a work-life balance as well. Today I picked them up from school, and after that I'm back off to work again. Yeah, no. So it is really about finding the proper balance between things. And for me, there's no on or off. Although I really tend not to work in the weekends, and that's something as a former football journalist.
Yeah.
When you always had to work weekends. I feel that's the biggest luxury in my life. That Saturday and Sunday. I mean, we're a business publication. We're doing office hours. That's great, European office hours. And after that, I don't really have to work unless I'm traveling. So I think that's the biggest asset in
Rewarding.
my life, that work-life balance.
Well, that's amazing. That's amazing. We should all have that, balance. So yes.
Exactly.
Okay, Remco, just a couple of last questions about us, about Newstex, and
Yeah.
because you decided to join our community of amazing content creators like yourself. So we would like to ask, do you believe that our syndication service helps your publication in any way?
Yes, and for us it's very important because we're a mission-driven organization. Of course, we're a news organization, but our mission is to bring, most reliable and timely information to the wider European tech ecosystem. And we do that because we want the ecosystem to thrive and to grow. And especially nowadays, with the situation in Ukraine and Russia threatening our democracy, but also other economical things in the world. I think it's very important that we see, that we put Europe on the map, literally, with our content. So the more eyeballs it gets, the better. And I think and I believe that your audience, which is a very business focused audience,
Yeah.
and also the syndication partners you have, you know, brings us a new audience basically that we otherwise wouldn't reach. So for us, that's incredibly important. And that's the reason why we make the content, is to be read not just by people in the industry who are already very interested in it, but also people, let's say, more outside or adjacent to these industries, and make sure that they understand really what's going on in the technology ecosystem in Europe and how important that is at the moment.
Well, thank you. That's amazing. That's amazing. Hopefully, we are going to, do our best to make you highlight and reach these new audiences inside of our distribution channels platforms. So yes, thank you for trusting us, and we'll try our best to make you and your amazing brand highlight inside of this platform and reach this new and professional audience for you. So, well, I had one last question, but I think that you already responded to that, and it was because, why did you decide to partner with Newstex? If you want to share any extra things, please go.
No, I have a very practical answer to that. So
Okay.
besides, of course, getting more eyeballs for our content and putting the technology ecosystem in Europe on the map, but I think it's very important why we decided to work with Newstex is because, of course, we can go to all these syndication partners individually, but we like to have, what we like is your sort of, I would say, an aggregator setup, that you work with multiple syndication partners and pushing our content out there. So we're a very small team. We don't have time to, you probably already noticed it took some time to set us up, because we have a plethora of things going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for us, it's very important to have one steady partner for a long period that does everything for us, and that we're, sort of a hands-off approach for
Yeah.
us. Just give us your RSS feed and we're done. For us, that's very convenient. I would say I'm efficient, but at a certain point, I'm also, strategically lazy. If we don't have to do anything, then even the better for us, So I wouldn't say that it was a lazy decision to make. It was a very conscious decision. But it serves the way we work and our setup quite well, because it was such an easy and seamless setup for us. Basically just an RSS feed and we're good to go.
Exactly. And that's, some of the main benefits that we always try to highlight when meeting with new publishers, that is practically effortless for you. And that's very important because we are saving you time, money, all of this. So yes, thank you so much for, noticing and sharing that kind of thinking. And well, Thank you for all of the time that you've been here with us today, sharing your stories, your
You're
experience,
welcome.
all of your career. It's been amazing, and um, we know that all of your efforts for 2023 are going to be amazing for Silicon Canals, and are going to, yes, fingers
Fingers
crossed,
crossed.
fingers crossed. So all of the success, from us. And we are inviting all of our audience to please go and check Silicon Canals, such an amazing publication. So please.
Yeah.
Thank you, Remco. I'll let you go for the day. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.